After being set the challenge to make a postmodern short film, I struggled to come up with an idea, as previous short films I had seen had been more based on ideology than actually a moving narrative. It was more like watching one scene of a film than the whole film. I didn't really like this. After some research, I found a short film called La Loteria, which is the complete opposite. It was like watching a full feature film in just 5 minutes. I love this idea of breaking the usual narrative conventions of short film, and therefore use this in my own. First and foremost, I decided to create a genre hybrid for my film, mixing psychological thriller and romance. Even though this is a convention of postmodernism, the genres that are normally mixed together aren't so extreme. For example, rom-com, action-adventure. Psychological thriller and romance was definitely not one of them. As a convention psychological thriller, I used low-key lighting for my mental breakdown section clips. I felt this added a random insert of tension and drama to the film, to represent the characters' distress and struggle within it.
Nothing happened!
As these clips appeared to be random, it was a major shock for the audience, as it was such a large juxtaposition from the soft, natural lighting I used as an influence from the romance genre, as well as Andre Bazin. A way I challenged and developed forms and conventions of real media text was through my use of music. For my film, I believe music was a vital part to create tension and building anticipation. Like Hitchcock said, there is no terror in the bang, just the anticipation of it. I also wanted the music to mirror my character Maddie's mental state within the film. At the beginning it starts off beautiful lyrical guitar music, and then by the end it's disjointed, almost more like sound rather than music itself. Intertextuality was inevitable for a postmodern short film, especially when I was creating a hybrid involving a genre as popular as romance. As Altman rightly says, every genre film implicitly ingests every previous genre film. For my film Blank Pages, I took influence from 500 Days of Summer and The Fault in Our Stars. In my film, I replicated the shot of the character from 500 Days of Summer when she's lying on her bed, as well as imitating the soft natural lighting. I also used the text bubbles that they use in The Fault in Our Stars, so the off-screen dialogue could still be seen by the audience. I wanted my film to follow Roland Barthes' idea on narrative, so that the text could be unravelled and unveiled in different ways. This would mean that the audience would be engaged with my film, similarly to like they are in active audience theory. As well as this, I used Barthes' Enigma code by avoiding telling the truth and revealing all the facts in order to drop clues throughout the story to create mystery. Despite of this, I still wanted my film to be enjoyable and interpreted in different ways without needing to be analytical. This is why, in the final scene of the story, all the events come together so it is made clear to the audience what actually happened. The only thing that isn't unveiled is what the book really means, whether it represents her and Connor's relationship or whether it represents the mental state of her mind. When designing and creating my poster, I wanted it to relate to certain moments in my film. I did this by cutting and squaring off sections of my poster and changing the colour and noise. The colour was used to represent the differences and contrasts in her personality, whereas the noise added to the image portrayed the climactic moment in my film when she attempts to contact the boy by phone. I used postmodern influences in my poster, as my film was full of them. One was by posterising certain sections to imply the idea and conventions of the genre by blurring the line between simulation and reality. The second influence of postmodernism was my intertextual reference to Danny Boyle's Trance poster. In this, I used the colours and the titling they used in my own poster so that the audience who had seen Trance would be inclined to come and see my film also. In my poster, I tried to use high-contrast synthetic lighting as well as style my model by having mascara down her face to imply she was crying. This was only subtle, as I wanted my audience to find clues and hints in my poster in order to create mystery, like I did in my film. Another example of this were the two other images of her face I hid in the background. They were ghostly and difficult to see, as this implied the psychological thriller genre I used within my film. When it came to my review, I wanted it to seem completely different to my other two texts, so it was like reading an unbiased opinion of my film, where I still pointed out technical faults. I tried to create it as if someone completely different was commenting on my work. I decided that it would be best to appeal to my audience by an interactive website where they could like and share the post to various different social media websites. As my audience is aged between 15 to 25-year-olds, this was perfect, as they are the main users of this Web 2.0 tool. Before beginning my film, I created a simple survey which I handed out to a mixed group of 10 students to find out their likes and dislikes about film. I focused largely on the types of genres they enjoyed. Obviously, there were some anomalies, but the majority agreed that horror, thriller, romance, and comedy films attracted their attention the most, which then resulted in me creating a genre hybrid of romance and thriller. Audience feedback became crucial for me halfway through the development of my film, as my storyline was uninteresting and heading in a different direction than I intended it to go. As a result of wrong narrative movement, at the time, the final passage seemed to come out of the blue and had no meaning behind it. Firstly, I sought for audience feedback by hosting individual screenings for current media students who were aged at the average age of my audience viewer. Once completing my film, I posted it on social networking sites and held large group viewings to reach my film to the target audience. Surprisingly, the comments left on my film were supportive and positive, which I received from current media uni students to friends and family. My actors also chose to support me by sharing it on their own Facebook pages, meaning the film could reach an even larger audience. Even though the feedback I received was really encouraging, because it was from friends and family, I couldn't help but think it was a little biased. Therefore, along with my film, I attached a SurveyMonkey website link to a survey that I had created about blank pages that they could anonymously fill out. It asked questions concerning queries I had with my film and possible alterations I could make. This Web 2.0 tool proved extremely useful as my audience gave me honest feedback which they might not have been able to give if it were a one-on-one discussion with myself. Beginning the media course from AS, I was thrown right in the deep end as I was a complete novice due to not progressing from the GCSE course. Over that year, my skills developed immensely, and this was no exception for my A2 level portfolio either. Some of the technology I learned has continued into A2. The ones I found particularly good to use and attractive to look at were Scribe, SlideShare and Prezi, all of which I had previously used. I presented all my research and coursework on my new WordPress blog in different formats. This allowed me to present my work in simple interactive presentations which consumers could comment on. A new Web 2.0 tool I discovered this year was named Powtoons, which I used for my research stages. It was an animated presentation website which had ready-made templates to use which could be edited and adapted. The Powtoon could then be uploaded to YouTube for easy sharing. One development in technology from AS to A2 was my decision to update my editing software from Final Cut Express to Final Cut Pro. ProX was much more efficient for the user with filters and transitions always readily available to use. I believe it shortened the production timescale of my film by 20% as well as producing a better quality image. Due to its efficiency, it allowed me to spend more time on the finished quality and have time to fix small glitches. A new editing technique I learnt with ProX was the use of keyframes. This allowed me to animate and manipulate images I added into my film. An example of this is the falling pages in my credits. I wanted to add a creative flair to the generic credits used for most films. To make a keyframe, you click the top left icon in the corner of the screen, and when it goes yellow, you know you've made a keyframe. You can add a keyframe at any point in time during a clip in your timeline. For my clips, I made a keyframe at the beginning and at the end of my image. Since we created keyframes at the beginning of the clip, changes that we make at the end of the clip are automatically keyframed. Keyframes became very useful in the making of my film as well as my evaluation. Finally, the last editing and technology technique I learned was to do with chroma keyer. I was already competent at using the chroma keyer tool, however I wanted to develop my technique. Therefore, for my evaluation, I decided to use a green screen. I researched various different ways of producing a green screen, from the professional to the makeshift, and found points to keep in mind when producing my footage. It had to have an evenly and brightly lit surface, therefore when it came to chroma keying it was easier to do. It had to be hung on a flat wall so no shadows appeared. I used sellotape to tape it to my wall as well as the sheets together so there was no visible colour difference or shadows created, which would have happened if I mounted it on blue tack. I thought this made my evaluation look really professional as well as it developed my skills as it was something I always wanted to do.